Good day, everyone, and so sorry we are a little bit late, but thank you so much for joining us today, and a special thank you to the amazing lineup of speakers we have in this session. Thank you and welcome to Jaru Bilimoria, Saeed Hamouche, Kenny Cluett, and Simon Stumpf. And welcome and thank you to my colleague Clara Brower, who has made this session possible and who will be in control of our chat and we'll be gathering questions from the audience. I would like to start by sharing some thoughts in order to introduce the session and get us on the right tone. And right after this, I'll introduce each one of the speakers and we will begin our conversation. This will be a courageous dialogue about who we are and who we can become as an organization and as a field. And I would like to invite our speakers and our participants to be brave, because in this space, we will talk about our own biases, our own blind spots, and how we can overcome them. Overcome them in order to help our organizations achieve their full potential, to help the sector of social entrepreneurship practice deep equity, but I think more importantly, to help create a fully diverse and inclusive and equitable society. This is a reckoning moment for organizations like Ashoka, who clearly have dedicated all their existence to support those who are dismantling systems of oppression and inequality, but who are also recognizing that we still have a lot of work to do. Just this fall, we launched a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. And you can see how many organizations, corporations, even governments are launching similar efforts. I don't believe this is coincidental. These are times of extreme polarization that have unleashed a momentum of reckoning, a momentum of profound self-awareness. These times have unleashed an historical opportunity to destroy the system of oppression, to destroy this system of advantage and disadvantage that is centuries old. We at Ashoka recognize that we have clearly made mistakes, and unfortunately, we might continue to make them. But we have made a most courageous decision to review ourselves, our practices, our structures, and all of its consequences towards the work we do and all the lives it touches. We refuse to be part of what Ray Olgado calls performative philanthropy. We, the organization that helped build the field of social entrepreneurship, will not accept status quo. We never have. And we will not allow this crucial historical moment to pass on us. Our profound belief in systemic change led by social entrepreneurs who all at their core are builders of deep equity, and our trust in a world where everyone is a change maker, are at the heart of our certainty of a better future. But the truth is that as the global organization that we are, we have a long way to go. We have a lot of learning to do, and we have a lot of internal change to accomplish. This is just the beginning, but we're ambitious. We understand that deep transformation requires more than one organization to change. It demands a group of us, the field, to transform. We will begin by the hard, uncomfortable, and challenging internal work, but we are also committed to push and support for the entire field of social innovation to prioritize equity for all, not as a goal to achieve, but as the main reasoning of existence. This to me looks more like an everyone a change maker world. Thank you for allowing me to share these reflections, and let's now bring in our speakers and begin this very courageous conversation. Let me see if we can see them on the screen. Perfect. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to do a quick intro of each one of you. I'll promise I'll be as fast as I can, and then we can start a conversation. So I'll start with you, Jaru. Jaru is the founder of several innovative and award-winning NGOs. Among her organizations are Child and Youth Finance International, that pioneered a collaborative systems change approach, creating meaningful change in financial inclusion and economic citizenship education for young people around the world. She also founded Aflatoon International that has provided social and financial education to over 1 million children in 100 countries. Prior to this, Jeru founded Childline India and Child Helpline International, which have facilitated a global movement for protection of children and youth and are active in more than 181 countries. Jeru is a Skoll Awardee, an Ashoka Fellow, and a Schwab Fellow. Welcome, Jeru. I'll move to Said. Said Hamouche launched Mosaic RH in 2007. Mosaic is a major actor of the economic inclusion of graduates from less privileged backgrounds. In 10 years, Said has forged strong ties with large companies and is now a reference in diversity and equal opportunities. In 2015, in collaboration with several business leaders and in order to amplify the impact of his work, Said formed the Mosaic Foundation, which is designed to accelerate the economic inclusion of talents from less privileged communities. And in May of 2018, he was asked by the President of France to join the Presidential Council of Cities. Said is also an Ashoka Fellow. Welcome, Said. I'll move to Simon. A couple of my colleagues are joining us today. Thank you. Simon is a Director of Venture and Fellowship for Ashoka in the United States. Prior to joining the USD in 2014, Simon led Ashoka's programs in East Africa for 4 years, and before that, coordinated a global collaboration of over 100 leading social entrepreneurs focused on rural innovation and farming in Africa and South Asia. He lives in rural Viroqua, Wisconsin, and in 2015, co-created and launched Ashoka's All America work to redraw the map of social entrepreneurship in the United States and make it more diverse. And last but not least, Kenny Cluett, also a colleague. Kenny launched and leads the Hello Europe initiative, providing resources and enabling powerful collaboration between social entrepreneurs and change makers who are addressing the problem of immigration in Europe. Before Hello Europe, Kenny led a number of initiatives within Ashoka, including the Venture Initiative in Spain, the Start Empathy efforts in the United States, and helped launch Ashoka's Young Changemakers. He has also worked in strategic consulting and with faith-based organizations. He's based in Madrid, Spain, and has a degree in humanities from the University of Alcalá de Henares and a master's in divinity from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in Chicago. That was a mouthful, and I am very honored to be sharing the stage with such a group of people. And again, this is a very courageous conversation, so I invite you all to open up as much as possible. Let me kick us off with a question to Said. Said, you bring a level of expertise into this panel that I want to dive in deep into. You have managed to disrupt an industry through showing the power and value of diversity. Can you explain a little bit of your journey and how does Mosaic HR was able to prove to the corporate world the tremendous power of diversifying their workforce?
Hi, everybody. Hello, Lorena. Thank you very much for thank you for inviting me to speak with the Ashoka communities. I'm living in France. I was born in the suburb of Paris, and I have a point of view very strong because now we need to understand that in France it's a country, your multiculturalism in France is very strong. And your history is based on the multiculturalism, on the diversity. It's the history of the France. Your official motto is the freedom, equality, and the brotherhood. That's the value, les grosses valeurs, big value of the France, French Republic. But when I say that, that's important as well to understand that if you are young in France, you haven't the same chance that's the all people in the France, and there is a real injustice. I have understand some things very important that with equivalent diploma in France, a candidate must send some 4 times more CV against to obtain interview. So we know that's a problem of the ethnic people. If you are Arabic, if you are black, if you are from a social minority, it's more difficult for you to enter in the system, because we are like clone words in France. If you have do the same studies that the people who are the power to take the decision, so you have the chance to have the door is open for you. So I beg your pardon for my English, but it's important to introduce the situation in France actually. So it's really a beautiful country, a country with a lot of opportunities, with a big cathedral all around the world. People want to visit this cathedral, the Tour Eiffel. It's fantastic, but it's important to know that if you are young people, eh bien, is more difficult for you. In at the same times, there is a lot of opportunities. The firms need to recruit. The, the, on the firms recruit the same person, the same kind of person, and there is a problem in the suburb because there is a lot of chômage, a lot of difficulty to find a job, and is a waste of talent, because these people from ethnic minority or from social minority can't work like all people. So we have decided to create the first agency of recruitment specialized on diversity. Because the diversity, it's the way to grow when you are a firm. It's easy to understand that if you are two person different, you have two ID. So it's like a plus for the reflection of the organization. So if you have the same studies, the same parcours, the same experience, you have the same ID all the times. So have the same people with the same ID. It's a good thing for start a business, but when your business grow quickly, he at a moment he can't se développer. You can develop at a long way. So that's important to understand the mixity, the diversity. It's necessary for push the economic development in a society. So we decide to organize this agency. This agency have worked with the big firms in France, 10 years, and with the support of Ashoka, we have now a good economic model. We have pushed than 8,000 young people who are signed a contract and working on this big company. And this experience now is very interesting, because we have understand with the study of McKinsey that the impact of mosaic Arash, it's more than 15 million euros from economies, and is has huge economic costs. 150 billion euro, which represents some kind 7% of the GPD. So if GDP. So if a society invest in the diversity, it's a guarantee for increase the way. So I try to améliorer mon anglais. Wait a minute.
We understand. Thank you, Saeed. Thank you. That was a very, very strong kickoff, and you were well understood. Thank you. Simon, I would like to move to you. You were part of the team inside of Ashoka that identified a huge gap or a huge lack of diversity in the social entrepreneurship field in the entire United States. Can you share a little bit what were some of your findings and what inspired you and your team to create the All America Initiative?
Absolutely. And Lorena, in most recent years, you were very much part of this team. So you know the answer to this question, but I'm happy to share with this group today. As Saeed said, France is a multicultural country, and that's one of the places from which we draw strength. That's absolutely true of all the countries that we work in Ashoka. I was actually working in Kenya, and our board of directors was pointing to a problem that was becoming pretty pronounced. They were calling it a problem, and it was that fellowships in Kenya were going to expats. We had a grant to elect hundreds of fellows in rural innovation and farming, as was part of my bio, and towards the end of that grant, a big percentage of them were going to expats doing global expansion work in English-speaking Africa. And the board rightly was saying, is this right? I mean, is this where we should be putting these resources? And I don't know that we've publicly shared that, but here we are announcing that that was a big internal challenge for us. And I think I heard that it was hard because I was an expat in East Africa, and that's not true. Most of our country offices are country teams. And so it was a raw nerve for me. But I also was saying, yeah, but aside from the expats, the rest of our fellows in East Africa are almost all in Nairobi. They're all Christian, despite the fact that this is a religiously diverse country. They're very well educated, and they're not necessarily role models of everyone a change maker, which is a big part of Ashoka's work. Now, I think the other big part of Ashoka's work isn't just everyone, the public, but it's to say we have leading social entrepreneurs who could and should be resourced differently. So we're speaking to foundations, governments, policymakers. And I'm very proud in Kenya, for example, of fellows like Adrian Mukebi of the Kenyan Agricultural Commodity Exchange, or Ann Njogu of Crew, or David Korea of EcoToilet, because they are exemplars globally of good social entrepreneurship. But the fact that they're all in one city, they all have international degrees and passports and all these things makes them less accessible. So I had this experience and this conflict. I came back to the US because I wanted my kids to be, Midwesterners and live on a farm. And I saw the same exact problem with different dimensions in the US. And so here the challenge was that 4 cities in the US have like 15% of the population and 60+% of our fellows, right? They were the majority of our fellows were in 4 cities, and the fellowship skewed white and skewed male and very, very well educated as well. Right. And so I looked at these challenges and said, I can't do this again. Right. Where like we bring all these fellows, and I live in a place that's rural where people are like, oh, yeah, but social entrepreneurship must be some mark of privilege. Right. It must be for people in big cities with lots of money. And so that doesn't resonate with me. That's not true to the 40 years of Ashoka saying problems are everywhere, so are solutions. In fact, people closest to the challenge are best equipped to solve them. And so based on what we believe to be a firm belief that had to be true, this was the 5 years ago that you referred to, Lorena, groups of colleagues at Ashoka who said, of the everyone a changemaker vision, the everyone part feels really important to us. Like, how can we make sure that that's reflected? And so I can maybe later share some of what we've done and some of the progress we've had. We've been able to really flip number, and we've been able to really move the needle on who was getting elected as a fellow, so that today I can say I'm really proud of this whole effort of this team, that we better reflect the diversity and dynamism of this country, which is always there. And again, open the conversation saying that these are multicultural, multilingual, diverse places. I think we would just say in the US, there's also the issue of white supremacy, which is that the comfort and the beliefs and the ideas and the organizations of white people matter more. And so a lot of the work has also been, how do you not just help folks of all backgrounds fit our mold, but really look at our mold, which has some biases baked into it. So how do we de-bias ourselves as a key first step as part of this process? So that's stuff I think we maybe will talk about as a group as others start weighing in. So I'll pause there if that's cool.
Thank you, Simon. Let me bring Jeru in. Jeru, even though you have launched your own organizations with very specific focus, for example, on children's well-being and safety, you are what we would call a collaborative entrepreneurship leader. As I understand it, your knowledge and passion for the field of social innovation and collaboration between all its players is one of your main objectives. Do you agree with this assessment? And can you share with us a little bit of what have been some of your efforts? What have you learned, for example, from Catalyst 2030 when it comes to collaboration and bringing diversity of players into the field of social entrepreneurship? I believe you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so firstly, a bit about Catalyst 2030, because you mentioned all the other organizations and not Catalyst. Catalyst 2030 is a movement for social entrepreneurs by social entrepreneurs, or practitioners, as we say, in the lead. So we have a really, really diverse group of people who are members. We are not even a year old. We launched in January, and we have close to 500 plus members who are part of the movement and growing almost every day. Ashoka was one of our founding partners, as you know. All our members are from across the world. But what we did notice, and I think it was also brought up earlier, is what we did notice that from Africa, more than from Asia, we had a lot of non-African members, so to speak, and we noticed that that was the case in many other places. So we have actively started regional chapters, and actually one of our goals is that across all networks, we should see that African entrepreneurs are close to 80% represented and representing the continent, because currently that is not the case. I think, and for us, because our members were from Ashoka, School, Schwab, and Echoing Green, and the initial cut from all of these members are what they are, that's how our initial pool started. And that is the reason why we are now, our members are proactively working towards looking at it differently. We have a pretty diverse group, and yeah, it's pretty heterogeneous. And it's nice to have that. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Jeru. Kenny, let me finish with you the first round. Can you explain a little bit what inspired you to launch Hello Europe? And more importantly, what has been one of the biggest learnings so far, particularly related to inclusion?
Yeah, thank you. It's such an honor to be here with you all, particularly with Said and Jeru, who I've worked with from a distance at different moments. And just to clarify, Hello Europe, actually, I did not launch it. We took it from being like pilots in different countries to make it a European organization, and that was a bit of the role I played. And Hello Europe emerges in 2015 as a kind of response from Ashoka and partners to the so-called migration crisis. Kind of thinking, what can we contribute here? How can we bring innovation from around the world to Europe? Because Europe, as many people who know about the subject know, Europe receives the least amount of migrants and complains the most of all continents in the world. So we realized we could learn from other places. And in that process, and maybe even part of my role coming on board, what we wanted to see was more innovation from within the communities, but very similar to what Simon and Drew were talking about. Our initial pull was Ashoka Fellows and the informal networks around that. And there's this moment, this wake-up call kind of for Hello Europe, which was in 2016. We did the first EU Migration Policy Summit in Brussels. We had 200 people there, 20 social innovators that were scaling across Europe, 180 policy experts, you know, whoever's who's who in Brussels was there. And there's this moment where we look around this room with 200 people and we realize there's about 4 to 5 people from immediate migrant backgrounds. At least visibly, maybe there are 7 total, you know, to be very generous. 2 of them were innovators and a few more were in the public. And we kind of knew that was coming, but just the visibility of that, of seeing all these white faces talking about migration and being the experts in migration just really shook us. And the thing was, as we were heading towards that, we also had been discovering by working with social entrepreneurs that one of the key issues around migration, and by the way, just to clarify, migration is not a problem. It's never been a problem, but there's problems in our structures and how we receive and include migrants or how we perceive them. And one of the main issues is the narrative, right? That there's this narrative around migration. There's bad narratives, you know, migrants are a threat or whatever. Obviously, we don't like those narratives. But even the best narrative we have around migrants and minorities in general, and particularly in Europe, is that it kind of portrays them as passive subjects of compassion or pity, or rights in the best case scenario. But that passive piece is key. But we in Ashoka believe everyone's a change maker, everyone should be a change maker. And we get to this conference and we see we're putting 20 social entrepreneurs on the stage that are basically white Europeans. And kind of, although we're saying everyone's a change maker, what we're showing is that white Europeans are the saviors for migrants, and it shook us to our core, to be really honest. And again, some of this we saw it coming, but there's like these visible moments where it's not just what we're saying, but what we're showing. And we were kind of showing that. So that put us on this process of starting asking questions of why is this happening? How can we change it? A few insights came out of that. Some were already shared, like these informal networks. We already have these. We also realized that our processes have kind of hidden criteria under the criteria. People need to speak like us and talk like the people that we admire. So we started just kind of taking some of this apart and asking ourselves, what role can we play in changing the narrative? And just to summarize, there's maybe 2 big points that at Hello Europe we've been pushing towards. And one of them is we can select, connect, and talk about change makers from underrepresented communities. Ashoka finds people. We do that really well. If we just adjust our vision a little bit, just like Simon was saying, to look in the right places and ask some different questions. But what we realized there is it's not just about selecting people and sticking them in our network, but actually co-creating and being part of building new networks where they can kind of connect. That we can figure out what problems we're facing together. What are some of the things that's happening? We can't do this for others. We need to do it with others. And that's been key. It's been very slow, but that's been really, really helpful to kind of shore up some of these social entrepreneurs and realize what are some of the things that we're not understanding, right? What are some of the things that they need from us, which I think is less than what we need from them, to be honest. So we're learning there. We're building pipeline to kind of take away our excuse. We don't know where these leaders are. It's like, oh, here's 500 of them, you know, which is something that Drew is doing as well with her network. So that's the first piece, is kind of selecting, connecting, and talking with these change makers from underrepresented backgrounds, particularly migrant and minority backgrounds for us, but it's a little broader. And the second piece is also working within Ashoka, because we realize we need to first identify what are some of these excluding systems within our structures. They're probably not intentional, but they're there and they're real. What's this hidden conscious or hidden criteria, unconscious biases, et cetera? This is very connected to the DEI initiative, but also to help enrich our imagination, right? To see Ashoka as a potential contributor to what Dr. King would call the beloved community, right? Like this is what we're aiming for, kind of putting flesh and bones to that everyone a change maker, I think is absolutely essential so that we start building towards that. And by the way, sessions like these are key to that.
Thank you so much, Kenny. We're going to move into a gallery view so we can see each other, all of us in the screen, and we can talk more with each other and maybe interrupt each other if we feel like it. But I want us to move into, from the concept of diversity. I hope you understood that at the beginning. I wanted to hear about the problem of diversity and then jumping into what actually inclusion means, which is a little bit of an extra layer of complexity. And so I wanted to bring you back, Jeru, just to kick this off and ask you if you have any experience, any even examples of other social entrepreneurs of color or who represent underrepresented communities, and how they are struggling to feel included in the field of social entrepreneurship. Is there any particular issues that you have seen of social entrepreneurs of color struggling in the field? Oh, I need you to unmute again. Sorry. I think we are back.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So sorry, I find that question slightly challenging, and I would actually say in some ways a bit offensive. I apologize, because social entrepreneurs are struggling across the board. And I think we have to be careful not to make entrepreneurs of color objects of pity. And we have to be very careful not to start giving them separate treatment and then finding a few of them and saying, oh, these poor people, we have done it. That's really not changing the white paradigm. It's just reinforcing it from a different way. So I'm sorry if I am being quite strong about this, because I think this is what happens very, very often. And then there'll be a few people who will be signaled as wonderful, and then you become the token face to it, and then it doesn't work. As an entrepreneur who's lived in Europe, I face racism on a day-to-day basis. And I face a lot of racism from the sector because I refuse to be the token colored entrepreneur. I'm saying accept me as an equal and accept me as having the same rights. And that doesn't happen. And that's because of this whole subconscious patriarchal mindset, which is there. So I'm sorry I'm coming across very strongly on this, but I face this, I see it, and I think however well-meaning we are, the minute we start putting these buckets and the minute we start doing this, we are actually breaking. What we need to break is give equal access. Yeah. So I would say institutionally, what we need to fight for is equal access and making sure that happens, be it through capital, be it to opportunity, be it to policy change, on an equal footing. And I don't think that happens as easily, and that's the shift which needs to come. So I'm sorry if that was really very firm, but I believe that, and I think we need to be careful about it. Otherwise, that's it. Yeah. I will go into another direction.
That is exactly what I was expecting to hear. As you heard my introduction, the beginning of this conversation, the beginning of true transformative change comes with really understanding how much this system of white supremacy is in our blood, it's in our brain, it has been impregnated into each one of us, and our capacity to become aware of each one of them will help us, will be probably the only way in which we can overcome them. So thank you so much for bringing it up this way with that level of courage and vulnerability, because that is exactly what we need to do in order to really address what we are talking about. There is a quote that probably James Baldwin would come out of his grave and kill me because I don't remember exactly the exact words, but basically is about you cannot change what you don't see, and you cannot change what you're not talking about. And if we don't start talking about this in that level of clarity in which you have explained yourself, we won't be able to evolve. So thank you again, and I would like us and encourage all of our speakers to keep us in that level of conversation, because that's exactly where we want to go. I want to take it from there, actually, Jeru, to bringing Simon only because I think that one of our biggest challenges, a particular experience or set of experiences that we've lived inside of our organization, is when we actively try to diversify the network of social entrepreneurs that we were bringing to our fellowship. What happens when you do that and you actually haven't done the internal work to understand how can you actually include them? How can you see them as equals? How can they start feeling that this organization is their organization, for them to be seen, respected, and understood as equals?
Yeah, I think, Lorena, I mean, that question takes me, I would say, right to my learning edge and representing the team that's working on this. I think this is where we know we need to be doing more. Where we're at, though, very much builds on, I think, Jeru's point. Kenny talked about our Ashoka criteria for electing fellows and the hidden criteria underneath. I think what we've learned is that those hidden criteria, like, so one of our big criteria is entrepreneurialism. Hidden criteria might be a $1 million, budget with 5-year plans. It turns out that's actually not a criteria. That's just our bias creeping up. And so what does good entrepreneurship look like is what we need to we need to interrogate. And then where does that question and answer land? What we've found is that creativity, social impact, ethical fiber, these are our other criteria along with new idea. Those are very expansive categories where this multiculturalism, this diversity that Said and all of us have referred to can very much flourish. So that's the venture. That's finding and supporting fellows. When we started this initiative, when we're a country in the US where 35% of folks are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, and 23% of our fellows would identify as in those categories, we're at 48%. So we've more than doubled the representation in the last 5 years. Similar shifts on geography and gender. And yet, this idea of equity, right? Like, this is how you opened it, Lorena, was explained to me really powerfully by Daryl Holiday. He's a candidate for the fellowship we're getting to know, as like equity in a house, which most people understand. It's your ownership stake. But equity in Ashoka, like, do you own? Are you an owner of? Are you invested in? Do you benefit from things that happen in this organization? And I don't think we're there yet. Where I think we are is a group of really beautiful, well-intentioned people who've done some listening, could do more listening, doing stuff and then saying, do you like it, right? And I see myself doing it. It's like, oh, I hope they like it. And then sometimes, yay, we loved it. And sometimes, oh, I did not feel good. Or, that didn't land. And it's not just me. It's a team drawing on their own lived experiences and different. I'm a white man in the Midwest. And other perspectives are very much represented on my team, but we're not, asking folks to step in and co-create and own with us. It sounds juicy. It's like, be an owner of Ashoka, but it also takes a lot of investment, right? We're using this language of banking equity. But I think that's where we're at now. And I think there's enough goodwill and there's just enough of there's just beautiful things happening. And surprisingly, it's interesting, like when we've thrown up like conversations for people to come together to support each other, it's like our white men in our fellowship just don't show up. And so we talk about like, our business model, our idea that what we have to offer is really not ours to give, it's access to other fellows. And so, is it a good idea to not support these leading social entrepreneurs because they happen to be white men? That's not exactly the way it's working, right? Like, we don't have a quota system. It's just that when we zoom out and look at the full diversity of the country, there's just a lot more competition. And yet we have far fewer white men elected. And yet all the other ones in previous years are not like contributing in the way that we're hoping and asking all of our fellows to contribute, despite the fact that they hold access to social capital and other financial capital. So we can't just appeal to Black, Indigenous, people of color to show up and own this thing, because like in some way they bring many experiences and richness to our network, but literal financial riches like might still be less available. So we need folks who have those privileges to be part of this thing that we're building.
Thank you, Simon. Said, you shared with me in our preparation conversation, you shared with me an experience that I think helps understand a little bit that this is a very human situation, and it's going to take some effort, probably a lot of effort, to get where we want to go. You shared with me an experience where you were actually invited, I believe it was to meet the president of France, and you were kind of like the person the invitee, the guest to the event, and yet, you know, for you to enter, you were discriminated by the whole, but you know, by the same system that is trying to praise you and award you. Can you share a little bit of that experience and how that actually plays into Mosaic HR?
Okay, no problem, Lorena. Welcome. um, uh, that's important to understand. That's something very subtle. I think if we want to work for to help the diversity, there is two ways. The first one is if you want to help minority, is not work of charity. Charity is a long time ago. It's a long habit. We need to change. We need to consider the person for what they are, what they can do, what they who are. So I mean, everybody have a capacity. On this capacity, need to find the place in the another organization. So that means it's economic reflection for resolve the problem social. It's my conviction. All persons have capacities. These capacities need to be considered like all persons with equality of the treatment. First important things. Second things important. Now, when you have find your place in the society, like me, for example, we have a good organization, lots of reconnaissance, lot of success from the media, from the political people, from the other people who work in the films company. So me personally, I am included in the society. I have a family, I have a house, everything is good for me. It's the good moments of my life. I find my place. But you know, there is something very important to understand. I'm not a victim. I am a person who are very tranquil, peace in my mind. But the reality of the situation is very complex. I will give you an example. Last summer, I was asked to join a meeting with a small group of experts at the French Prime Minister house meeting. And after that, we are sitting in the room waiting the Prime Minister. So it's like a reconnaissance, like comment on peut dire ça? Like a success to be with the top of the government for work, think about the problem of the society. It's like a very important moment. But on all that, grâce à Ashoka. Thank you, Ashoka. Thanks to Ashoka for I have to mean to work on to organize that. But when the prime ministers came in the room, a situation incredible was arrived because we all took smartphone for take picture or video because it's the top of the government. So we are happy to need to speak with this kind of person. Suddenly security guard come to see me and said to me, hey guy, I want to phone. Can you give me your phone? Yeah, okay. Why me? All people do the same thing. Why you ask me? Don't speak. Give me your phone. I need to check your phone. I was the only one Arabic in the room. So I don't want to be a victim, but this situation is not normal. Because at this moment, I have understood one thing, that we can success in your job, you can success in your family, but you will never consider like a real French. You are an immigrant. You are different. So that moment of the violence have pushed me to have more hope in my job. And if me, I can feel that what people who are more fragile think of the situation, what comportment they can have. That's important to them and understand that. So sorry for explaining this with a word English not very clean, but you know, the diversity, it's a strong problem in France, in Europe, in the world. We need to work seriously on this subject, because is a real problem of the humanity. So we need to take conscience quickly of this system. It's not normal to think the world only with the same people who have the same privilege. We need to build the equality. The equality can provoke a quiet society. So Ashoka needs to be an example of that. Ashoka need to recruit in the diversity, push the fellow need. Ashoka need to push the fellow to understand this problem and to help the fellow to progress on this subject. So Ashoka can be a bridge. The humanity needs to successful on the subject. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, nothing to be sorry about, Said. Thank you. Kenny, I know that you probably really want to comment about that, but before you do, let me share a couple of thoughts. I think you touched on something, Said, that is very important, and that is this misunderstanding that people of color cannot be racist or cannot discriminate. And that is such white privilege and misunderstanding, because if someone cannot be racist, it's because they don't have the power. And the reality is that all of these thoughts and this system of ideas is in all of our minds. I remember myself, having aggressions against myself of my native part of myself, trying to not look, as indigenous as I looked when I was a teenager. I remember those struggles within myself and how important it was for me to understand where that came from, who put those thoughts in my mind, who made me believe that only, the white blonde Barbie was the beautiful Barbie and none of the other ones were, right? And so it is a complex strategy in which there is a lot of work internally that has to be done. But then, those who make policies and those who create structures are there because we put them there or because we allowed them to be there. And so our own biases participate in the creation of that system. And how can then we make sure that our own biases destroy or eliminate the people or disempower the people that have created this system? Kenny, I know you have a lot of thoughts to what Said just mentioned, so I want to give you the microphone, but then open it up. We don't have that much time, actually. Now, I knew that this was going to happen to us, but Kenny, if you want to share a couple of comments, and then I have a question about a call to action for all of us that we want to leave our participants with.
Yeah, no, I don't have a lot to say, especially after I think both Jiro and Said have said two really important things that maybe I just want to point back to kind of honoring you and learning from you. On the one hand, right, Jeru said something that there's a complaint that comes up often, directly or indirectly, where people say, "Oh, if you diversify, then the quality goes down." I've actually heard this from people, and it's a bizarre misconception that also comes a bit from this white supremacy idea of whiteness is better, and but we can't give in to that and pretend that gets pity. What we're actually finding is that the best solutions come from the communities. Both of you, all of us have said that today. Best solutions come from the communities. That's what Ashoka is based on, is to say, let's go to the community, see who the best solutions are, and then scale those. And community leaders are better often. It's just that the sector we're in has made a certain kind of speech kind of more recognized. So I think it takes deconstructing that and finding those leaders and recognizing the power of their innovations, which are often less funded because it's harder to fundraise when you're not a white person. I remember Jeru once said to a group of migrant social entrepreneurs, he said, if you want to raise funds, bring a tall blonde man in with you to the meeting. Tell him to shut up and not speak, but just bring someone in there, because we're so conditioned to give white people money and not other people. So sometimes they have less funding or whatever, but we have to work around those to really find the solutions. And then the second, just really brief thing I'll say, which we're discovering with a lot of humility, is there are spaces where leaders that come from underrepresented communities, there should be spaces where they can connect and kind of build identity together. We found that's really helpful. Not to say this is your only space, just develop over there, but to kind of give some spaces for that. And for white people like me to be like, I can't have FOMO over that. Like, oh, I want to, you're being racist because non-white people are meeting together. No, there's a need for those spaces to kind of build identity, to remind each other, to listen to stories, to work through some of these identity things in kind of a courageous and safe space, but also to be part of the larger conversation at the same time. So it's both and I think finding that balance is one of the keys for organizations like ours in the future. And we failed a lot, so we'll keep trying, and especially learning from leaders that are already doing that.
So we have a community listening to our conversation of funders, philanthropists, other social entrepreneurs, other change makers. We have some young change makers. There's a very robust community of listeners. So my last question to all of you, and we have 5 minutes to address it. If each one of you can say, what would you tell our audience? What would you tell the field of social entrepreneurship about why diversity, inclusion, and equity are the way to go, are the best bet for actually a better world for everyone to be possible? Do you have some call to actions, some recommendations for the people that are listening to us? If someone wants to raise their hand, if not, I can pick on you.
Oh, go ahead, Said.
You're on mute, Said.
Thank you. Thank you. It's time for me, in my opinion, it's time to build a strong partnership and alliance together for keep the end of the discrimination and create an inclusive society. Obama yesterday in France called we need to democracy inclusive. He have say all. That means we need to build bridge. Ashoka is the builder for that. We must be ambitious objective. We need to have objective ambitious for this subject. And we fix the level very high on this thematic. We are open Mosaic on the all organization around Mosaic to transfer your methodology to any fellow or all change maker interest to implement in your country, in the countries. For example, at this moment now, I am happy to tell you that we going to work with Ashoka France for the criteria to selection to the fellow. At this moment, exactly, we have built with partnerships with Accenture. We have built a website called diversityoftalent.com. And this website is like a point of rendezvous between candidates, and we check automatically with the psychometry the aptitude and the competence of the candidates, and we bring this information at all recruiter in the world. So this French website, we can give the all code for produce the same website in England, in USA, in India, in all the world for
Wow.
contribute to organize the build. The build. It's a way of the open source naturally. So it's my point of view.
And Clara, if we can get that website so we can share with the audience. Jeru, we have no more than a minute. Can we please close with you? You are on mute. Sorry.
Okay. Well, all I'll say is everyone is different. 5 fingers are different. Everyone is different, but you need all 5, right? That's what humanity is about. So let's please appreciate differences and treat everyone equally. It's not happening so far. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Jeru. Thank you, Jeru. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Saeed. And thank you so much, Clara, for helping us manage the chat and bringing questions from the audience. Thank you to the audience for having this courageous conversation with us. You have all been very brave, and I'm very grateful for your time and your honesty.
Yeah, thank you, Lorena, and great being with you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Take care of that.
Ciao.
Un truc comme ça.
Bye.
We're still live streaming. Okay.
Are we good, Clara?